Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan with Exoderma, an exponential world, here with Lewis.
Hey guys, how's it going?
We wanted to talk today about smart suits, which I think have everybody knows what a smart suit is. Essentially, like if you watch Star Trek or you see Ready Player One, or you've seen Tesla suit, or you've seen XNs. There are plenty of companies that have these smart suits that do all these cool features, and they're integrating technology into them slowly. Now, Lewis and I actually have this very similar passion for smart suits, but we've never really talked about what it is that we really see in a smart suit and what that would look like. And so, because I'm mostly just like a general technology person, I love the idea of it. I don't necessarily understand the complete function. I really want to hear Lewis's vision of what you see as a smart suit. Maybe you could start with something simple and then jump 50 years into the future as what a smart suit would be, or how do you think about it?
So I believe that initially the smart suits are going to be able to gather some type of data from the body, some signal. It depends on what you're interested in. I guess initially my interest lies in measuring neuromuscular data, neuromuscular activation specifically. So having an EMG based Under Armour garment, right, which you just slap onto your entire body, and there are electrodes around it that measure, the electricity passing through them at that certain point. You can figure out the relative strength of those signals, and then possibly display that information. Hopefully, I don't know if it'd be possible now, but hopefully in the near future to display that in some semi-real time or real time way, so that as you're moving or you're performing an activity, you can see a display of a animated character skeleton with muscles, also, moving and activating its simulated muscles in a relative way to the same way that you are. So I think that would be the first initial smart suit that you could have.
So sort of going off that idea is that you'd want to essentially have muscular activation data that could be standardized to actual strength or power, in which, yeah, essentially, right, like where you have a suit on that would be able to determine how much a muscle is contracting, and maybe pair it to how much force is being generated at that particular muscle and tie that in together onto a single model.
Yeah, and I believe that there's also more like types of information or data that you could possibly try to get. For example, you could get like from a person that is actually limping and a person that is walking pain free, and you could figure out how their muscles are activating differently, the relative different timing of the activations, and all these other different. And then, I mean, it also depends on the resolution that you're able to get. Like, how fine are you able to pick up those muscles that are going to be activating, so you have a good idea. Um, yeah, and I believe that you might even need to go into the brain too, to pick up information from the brain. Um, but essentially, it would just be like, what is the movements that this certain person has been doing that are leading to their pain, their chronic pain that they experience. This, I'm not sure if it worked for acute pain. I think there's like, we also have to get into the whole concept of what pain actually is and how it's developed. So yeah, the suit would be, I guess, there to help in some ways, not necessarily always.
So like, my whole thing about this suit is literally this whole Star Trek-esque concept of a smart suit. Maybe not Star Trek. Maybe I don't think there are any movies maybe that have all the features you could really tie into a smart suit, and there are not really any. We're really looking at technologies that you can integrate into fabrics or integrate in between fabrics that are thin enough to actually be able to read or do something. And so like, right, you talk about piezoelectric sensors. One of the things that really interests me is piezoelectric sensors, because the way that they detect the heart rate using a piezoelectric sensor is super interesting, in which it's like, could you apply that kind of technology to the entire body? Like, these piezoelectric sensors are little strips, these little flat strips. Could you make a fabric that was able to actually determine not just read like muscle, like the muscle activation using EMG, but I mean, is EMG piezoelectric sensors?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are actually.
Never mind. Okay, so I didn't know the difference, so that makes sense. So yes, you're right. Wow, so piezoelectric sensors is what they use. Okay, so like another feature then would be, we're talking about just measuring human performance and movement. Obviously, we added in IMU, so accelerometers, gyroscopes, things of that nature. Obviously, there's a positioning problem to be solved. I think one of the bigger things we're looking at is being able to have a complete, maybe external/internal image of body diagnostics real time. So we're talking about heart rate, we're talking about muscle activation patterns, we're talking about force generated, torque at joints. We're talking about potentially fabrics that could constrict themselves based upon blood flow, because there are plenty of compression materials that they use to decrease or increase blood flow depending on what you're trying to do with the muscle. You could potentially heat one. So we're talking about electrothermal fabrics that essentially get warm because of resistance. The real trick is placing the different ways to generate electricity different parts around the body. Like, oh man, there's so many applications. I think of, like, you could layer on electrochromatic fabrics. Maybe there's a paint that changes color based upon the frequency of electricity that's being run through it. That's just more of an aesthetic thing. But like, we look at body diagnostics, you're talking like, man, like there's so many applications: body temperature, heartbeat, blood, sweat content. Like,
Yeah, the sweat content would be actually pretty big, especially if you could have some type of microfluidic onboard system that is able to be like a chemistry lab where you pass the sweat information through and you can detect this person's I don't know, hormone levels or certain proteins if they're in there in the body or something.
so I really think like what that really looks like is literally molecular size. Is that so? Like a lot of these sensors, like you get an Arduino sensor that does, I think, 0.2 or 2.9, like 2 nanometers, something like that. It's really it's like $12 or $13, maybe $20. You can buy it and it can actually sense air quality based upon the molecule size. And so what we're talking about here is how large is the molecule and how sensitive is the sensor.
Yeah, it's going to improve for sure, hopefully in the future, especially 10 years, 20 years down the line. We should be able to have like some ridiculous sensors that provide crazy data at a really high speed. So maybe it'll start becoming a possibility, but I guess the fact that we're talking and thinking about it now is good.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's like I don't know, it kind of paints the. I guess I'm trying to paint the future of what this will look like. I don't think right now that wearable technologies are really taken too seriously. Like, what's your opinion on wearable technologies in the market?
Not necessarily yet, because I feel like the moment where people were starting to kind of invent computers, and the first computers were like the size of a whole room, right? They were huge, very impractical, and they just did very few things. So that's kind of what our wearable suits are going to be like if we invent them right now. Just really chunky, really large, ineffective, inefficient computers. All right, but the better that the material science advances, and the better that all these other areas in technology are incrementally getting better, in 10, 20 years, the suits will stop being clunky and they'll actually start becoming wearable.
Yeah. Okay. So as you're saying is that the difference between it being adopted is literally the size of, like, how easy it is to use or wear or whatever.
Yeah, well, I mean, we would need like ridiculously high, expensive equipment to build an actual suit, and that might not be marketable or economically feasible.
There are three companies right now that do have companies built on these suits, and the EMG suit specifically is called, I think, Athos is their name, and I don't know the cost of it, and I'm not sure the effectiveness of their approach, but it is I'm not sure if it's cost effective. Maybe you have a point. Like, maybe I'm not really sure if people are actually using it, because we probably see some, like, I don't know. It makes me think that the effectiveness of just an EMG data alone isn't predictive enough by itself. So you would need multiple sources of data in order to actually, like, make the suit seem like it was something that people needed. Yeah? Is that a line of thinking?
Yeah, and also the fact that they're starting to collect the data right now, I think, is important too.
Yeah.
That's also needed to make models of, I don't know, pain or injuries or something.
It stems back into what we're doing. Like, if the idea for us is to build a suit, then collecting the data right now is actually really good because we can eventually use this data.
Yeah, we should have enough biometric data in other forms to combine it with other types of information.
Yeah, my
But
thinking is just what?
yeah, overall in general, it's needed to have different functionalities for other applications too,
What
not
other
just to.
functionalities do you think of besides the EMG?
Um, well, you were just talking about all the other temperature sensors. You could talking about um, the sensors for like figuring out if a person is like their concentration of their sweat glands, what they're
Yeah.
secreting and producing.
So actually integrating all that stuff into it, so those are all feasible functions, bro. I just make stuff up, man. I can't tell you whether or not it's actually going to work. I can just tell you that it's in my head somewhere, and I'm curious if it will. So those things, they're actually feasible.
I'm pretty sure because there's like secretions in your sweat that contain a lot of information about your inner state. So if you're able to pick up that information and somehow process it and do the science, because the science exists, you just have to be able to do it. It should be possible. I don't see why.
No, man, I feel you. I guess it goes back to one of the previous things, is which it'll be technologically possible, but it's going to be the challenge of getting people to actually use it.
Yeah, I mean, there's like these crazy types of tests that people can do now for really cheap to figure out if people in Africa have a malaria or like HIV and stuff like that. So the fact that this has been like advancing the mini biology chemistry lab that you can have in your pocket is becoming more and more plausible to be able to have. Like this stuff wasn't available 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and even if it was super, like VR was super expensive. Like they're trying to develop virtual reality in the 90s, but it was $1 million for a whole room setup.
Exactly, and the quality or the crispness of the video wasn't as good as it is getting now.
Yeah, and okay, so that's the question that would lead into is, do you have any thoughts or predictions? I don't know if it's something you think about ever, but it's something that I think about on what technology will win out in integration for a certain thing. Because VR didn't win out, but some other form of media won out, and that was the internet. You know, and maybe the VR it couldn't have been tied in. But do you have any like thoughts about what will, like, for instance, we're working on computer vision. We're talking about suits here. There are I don't know, there are other technologies that would potentially win out in this race, or there isn't any.
So, that's a good point. I'm not sure what other type of, so the wearables, I guess, is one way to look at it.
Wearables and cameras.
Yeah, but I feel that the cameras would be integrated into the wearable suit information.
That'll happen. That's what I want to get to. Oh, man. Can you hear me, bro?
Can you hear me? I can't. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Okay.
Yeah, you cut off. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It's crazy. I don't know what happened. It recorded all of that, so I can chop it together. That's crazy.
Sure.
Did you hear my question, by the way, though?
No, I got cut off before that.
Okay, so you mentioned you feel like it's going to be integrated. The cameras will be integrated for that. I guess my question reason be, why do you think that, or necessarily not why, or how do you think it'll happen? Why do you think that, and how would it happen?
Because think about all the people and how they act today with their TikTok videos or their selfies, and how they're always pointing their cameras at themselves. So in the future, they'll be like, I need this to be automated. I need this camera pointing to be automatic. I don't want to hold this phone anymore.
Bro, you're right.
They'll just have like a camera in one room, and it'll be another camera in another room. and that's how they'll stream like live videos of their activities of a day in the life of some random person that just makes stuff like that, I guess. So I feel that cameras are just going to be all over the world, and you can just use that information if it's already there. I think you froze again.
Can you hear me?
There you go. I can hear you now.
That's so weird. It's saying my internet connection's unstable, but I'm right here by the router. Okay, I think there's a storm coming. That's why. Nonetheless, we won't take too much long on this, guys. Okay, so back to the question again. So so you're familiar with Moore's law, obviously.
Yeah. This might be me now. I can hear you, but I can't.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what's going on? What's up?
Yes, bro, I think there's a storm coming. It keeps cutting off. It's recording all this and putting it to the cloud, so we should be good. I'm gonna go pop into the cloud real quick. What I'm talking about, I keep trying to ask you, but it won't let me ask you. I guess they don't want me to ask you. Someone's trying to stop us from having a brilliant point. I'm not gonna look into it right now. Okay, so the point is, you know about Moore's law, transistors. You know about Zuckerberg's law.
I haven't heard of that. No.
Zuckerberg's law, which is Mark Zuckerberg, is that they've noticed since the beginning of Facebook, and as times continued through to 2020, that the amount of data and videos, information about themselves that people share doubles every single year. It's an exponential amount, meaning that you are spot on when you say that people are going to continue to share things of themselves. They talk about privacy politically, but what we really care about is like ourselves, So like you're right, like we're gonna have cameras. I think everywhere almost.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably start making laws about where you can have cameras and what you could do with that data. But yeah, essentially in like a smart house, I don't see why the smart house wouldn't itself have super many cameras, especially if it's trying to take care of a person that if they fall and they're old, they can have emergency services called by the house itself if it picks up on a person that can't get up after they fall.
That's so true. You could make a whole see, my thinking is gaming is for this particular instance, but you're talking about literally being able to monitor, like it'd be a system that you could put into a house, different cameras that would literally be able to monitor the person's health. Wow. That could be an application right now.
100%. Yeah. You just need enough cameras and get all vantage points of the house, and that's it.
I mean, you sell a security system that is technically not a security system, it's a health security system. So you have a package for $2,500, which is 15 cameras, and you get someone to install in the house, and then you have a separate modem that's also doubles as a modem, as a computer. So you're actually able to collect all this data, and it's being sent to this company who's in contact with this security person 24/7, or this health person 911, so they can reach out anytime. That's genius.
Yeah,
100%. That was a good idea. My thinking of it is literally just imagine you have a room with 3 cameras, and this is your VR room, right? And maybe one of the technologies you could have is like an omnidirectional treadmill, which they're working on. But imagine a whole room and the floor was an omnidirectional treadmill. And then you got games, you got a VR set on. I mean, you got the cameras, VR set on.
Yeah, I feel that would be a really good way to do body position tracking and stuff for virtual reality avatars, yeah.
Even I was thinking even too, like, imagine selling a gym package of cameras, right? So we're actually selling these 3D depth cameras, whatever, and they're X amount of money, and you sell, like, you have a whole space in the gym that's X feet by X feet, and we know the dimensions of the gym because we program it into the application. But we put 4 cameras in there, and we're actually able to measure these people in this room, all of them, with all the data that we collect already using just cameras. So we're actually selling, hey, you have an extra room in your gym, turn it in to an analyst center. You know what I mean? Like, you could get, you're right.
Yeah. That's really cool. I mean, it all depends, I guess, on the amount of room or space you have around you to move. Unless you have some weird contraption that allows you to stay in place but feel like you're moving, which I don't think is too possible yet.
They have them. They're called omnidirectional treadmills. You have to put a little band around your waist, and you can actually run in every direction, but it doesn't look convincing.
Yeah, I've used one of them. It's a little uncomfortable and it feels unnatural. But the idea there is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just not functional yet, or maybe there'll be a better way to do it. Where I've always thought, like, maybe there's a way. We're going off on a tangent. Let's just double back. So what we're talking about here is 2 separate things in a way: the use of smart suits for health data, and also the inevitable possibility or the inevitable conclusion that cameras will populate a large majority of our lives.
Yeah, you were also talking about Moore's Law and Zuckerberg's Law.
Yeah, essentially where we're going to continue to share more data, which, people are creating podcasts like crazy right now. TikTok is an example. Social media in general is an example. So it's really inevitable almost. So that's sort of my whole logic is I was asked a question today by the podcast I did. And for those of you who are listening, I did a podcast today to explain the technology that Lou and I are trying to introduce to the population. And one of his questions were how we're going to integrate it. And my answer was 2 things. One, I don't know. We're trying to figure that out. Number 2 is it's inevitable. Like, cameras are going to be places. And so the kind of applications that require computer vision are going to be far and wide. There will be a lot of applications to it. It's crazy to think about. Man. So that pretty much sums up the camera thing. Do you have any more thoughts on the suit to double back to that?
Yeah, I can only imagine what would be able to happen in the future, like something ridiculous, like what would be possible with a suit from 100 years from today.
So let me show you my Zoom, my Pinterest, because I have so you know how I had thought about the first soft body suit and everything, bro. Okay, so my whole thing is thinking about the future. And so I have a couple boards on my Pinterest. And one of the boards I have is called Project Zeus. And Project Zeus is like a full body exosuit, which has obviously an exoskeleton on it, but the internal stuff is all soft body. It's all smart fabric. And then the external is the way you use the smart fabric to control the external exoskeleton, right? So we'd be able to use EMG patterns to know how much force to deliver between a metal exoskeleton, two bodies of a metal exoskeleton, relative to how fast you're moving. So we could actually augment that using what we're doing now. And so it's that's sort of my thinking on it, is that we're going to get to this point where we essentially have an exoskeleton that does the same thing for our arthropods as it does for them. We'll be able to essentially have a completely pressurized exosystem that monitors and maintains our health. That's how I think of an exosuit. That's what I call an exosuit. So we're dealing with the fabrics and the exoskeletons themselves. Man, pretty crazy.
Yeah, you'd be able to make the suit so that you could be 10 times stronger and do some ridiculous stuff at an old age. And you'd be able to have maybe the nanotechnology developed to a point where they have self-healing materials so that your suit just heals itself, and it's kind of like an organism on its own that is part of you at some level.
I mean, there's a big push in we'll call it smart suits or smart clothing or smart fabrics in which it's all bacteria based. So the real question is, if we're already, I think 70% of our bodies is already bacteria, they live with us, symbiotic relationship and whatnot. If this is already the case, the only thing preventing it from actually being more true in our fabrics is just general how we think about it. Bacteria is in my clothing. But realistically, think about that. Imagine your sweats turn into electricity. Just think about that. You have fabric that In the fabric exists the bacteria that consumes salt and turns that salt into extra electrons. And then a second layer of the suit actually converts that into, actually collects the electricity and stores it in some kind of device. Like, I don't even know how to even, like, that's the stuff that I'm talking about, man. Like, we're talking about stuff that's already here, that's already being done. It's just a matter of integrating it together.
Yeah, man, that's 100%. I'm 100% sure that it's what it feels like to want to like invent something that you can envision, but that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, and that's sort of how it works, though. Is like, that would actually dial back on my whole predicting the future versus actually inventing the future, in which one of those only actually exists. And the one that wins is the inventing the future. Like, Facebook didn't have to win. It could have been MySpace. It could have been Friendster, but Facebook did it. They managed to figure out what the users actually wanted and implemented on it. But it was inevitable that it happened. Social media was going to happen. It was the question of who integrated it better. And that was Mark Zuckerberg, using universities as his platform. That sort of like that whole conversation. But to dial back to your thought on augmenting strength and making old people stronger, it really ties back into looking at how the musculoskeletal system of the arthropod works. Like looking at an ant and how its head can lift 100 times its force, its neck can lift 100 times its force, its weight, just because of the way that the musculoskeletal system is structured. It's absolutely incredible. Like so, for instance, I don't know if you've ever looked into it, but like if you took a shell of an exoskeleton creature and their shells overlap, right? So you have a layer by layer, like dragon scales. I'll do it like this, but we'll do it like this for more concept. The muscle doesn't attach to a bone; it actually attaches to the outer plates. So whenever you have any movement, you have a muscle that attaches on both ends of the plates, like our muscles. Like whenever they cross over limbs, like the bicep actually attaches to the radius, or in the ulna. It's the same concept, except for it applied to layers and layers and layers. And think about that. If you had 5 layers or 5 specific muscles that were designed to produce force at one specific joint or one specific movement and a combination of joints, like imagine what that looks like. Humans don't have that. Like humans are slightly different, so we're not built like that. But to be able to like put up, my thinking is like augmenting the human structure is going to look like a soft body exosuit, not a hydraulics based suit. So that's where we go back to the whole soft electronics, electric actuators, the rubber ones, like that you layer them and maybe they get stronger, but like where you'd have like, maybe there'd be like a hard frame that would attach to the suit itself, but the actual leverage, the doing that's actually contracting and making movement happen is because it's soft, right? So you're actually able to put something on comfortable that makes you, and it could be less in pain for older people. It could be makes you not have to use your back as much if you're lifting boxes. It makes you be able to compete with a robot if that was something that needed to be done. Or I don't know, man. There is so many like jump. Like one of the things I really want to do is jump. Or imagine jumping 200 feet off the ground. Serious.
Or like flying at that point.
Exactly. But think that you could take a fall from 200 feet and hit the ground and be just fine. So in MIT, they developed this hydraulic system that mimics hummingbirds, right? So hummingbirds can take in a ridiculous amount of force to their brains and their heads because of the way that the fluid works in their cranium. So like we all have like this spinal fluid that actually sort of protects the movement and whatnot, right? Theirs is different than ours. There is like a viscoelastic fluid. Like you've seen the fluid you can run on? So whenever force hits it immediately, it gets super plastic. Like imagine you could put that as a layer in between a soft suit and a hard suit. And you could actually absorb some level of force that you would never even feel inside the suit because of how it is dispersed within the...
Yeah, it's interesting to consider. I mean, it's crazier to think about like what would be required in terms of like how much space you would need between the suit and yourself due to the forces maybe, but I'm not sure. Maybe it has to be part of your internal biology in a sense.
What do you mean?
Like your brain and all your organs inside would have to be already in some sort of suspended viscoelastic fluid from birth, like as
okay.
Yeah, in order for that to be the case.
Are
But
you
I'm not
studying the
sure if it would work like
constraint?
an exosuit where like you have it around your body.
I,
Makes me wonder.
I know there's going to be a constraint to how much force could actually be absorbed based upon our biology, which would make it less efficient. I guess my question would be that my logic would be that it's actually increasing the constraints. All right, so it maybe not 200 feet, maybe 50 feet, maybe 3 stories. You could actually land with one of these soft body suits, and it would be able to collect the force in some manner to disperse it so you wouldn't be injured. I don't know, just one of my crazy ideas, but I don't know, man. It just seems like there's going to be an obvious use for this. It's really, again, just a matter of how it's integrated. That's sort of my final thoughts on this. Like, it seems that most of these technologies come down to how it's integrated and how effective the people who are inventing it integrate it. Generally, as a person, it's very lucky that we have a team, but mostly it's just a single person trying to do this. But man, okay. Well, that's pretty much all I'm thinking as far as smart suits and computer vision and that particular field. Any final thoughts on this, Lewis?
Yeah, man. We'll be able to figure stuff out little by little, and hopefully produce something where eventually it'll be able to detect some type of cancer that you have 15 years before you get it, so that you can start getting treatment or start adjusting your lifestyle, so that eventually you don't get it. So I guess in that sense, those are the last things I want to say about why I'm trying to make a smart suit, so that it actually helps people. Besides I guess jumping 100 feet in the air is cool and everything, but if you're gonna get cancer, then I guess that's not that good.
Yeah, no, I have to extend this now because I want to explain that one. I guess that's more of an egotistical thing that I want to do, to be honest.
No, it's fun. It's fun for sure.
But you're right. But you're totally right. So, and I think it goes on to where we would actually be integrating almost all technology into living, not just the suit. It's like, okay, your toilet now does this and et cetera, whatnot. But all right, man. Thank you for clearing that up, though. But I guess I'd never really thought about the whole landing thing and the biology, how much it would affect you internally. But all right, guys. So as you can see, we're still working on how this podcast is going to go. But if you stuck around for listening, continue listening, because these are going to get better and better. And we're going to really figure this out and narrow it down. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to ask below. And thank you guys.
See you guys. Take care.